What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Mind of Marsal podcast. This is episode 99. I am your host, Armando Marsal. You can find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. Follow me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Mind of Marsal. As usual, before jumping into it, I just want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you all. Remember, if you're enjoying the podcast, enjoying the content, please make sure you rate, follow, review, like wherever it is you're consuming the podcast, whether it's Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, Podbean. Make sure you like, follow, rate, and review the podcast there. Well, it's been a couple of weeks. I haven't recorded the podcast in about a month or so, but I am back on the saddle and we are going to be hitting the ground hard right now. We got a lot of things on deck here. And I'll be to start off with, we're going to do team previews. So the plan is now to do every week, we're going to do two different podcasts. Well, four teams in each podcast. I'm going to be going division by division here. And with me, joining me is the great, the one and only Tyler Buecher. Brother, how's it going?
What's going on, Armando? Excited to be here and to chat some division by division breakdowns with you. It's been a very, very fun NFL draft. Excited to see how all those moves and transactions have impacted the upcoming landscape for this 2025 season, which feels right around the corner already.
Dude, I people ask me, oh, what's coming up? This and that. And I start talking about the NFL draft guide, which is like right around the corner. Like when we start off, usually I think it launches June 1st, usually. We haven't gotten the exact details, so don't quote me on that this year. I don't want to say it's going to launch June 1st exactly, but that's usually the launch date for the NFL draft guide. We're still talking about that behind the scenes, but yeah, time is flying, man. It's been about a month since I recorded the podcast. Like I told you before we jumped on, I just took a little break, but we're back and we've been covering the NFL. We obviously covered the NFL draft. We did free agency. Our player profiles are up on the side of Fantasy Guru. You, myself, Russell, Jeff, Rich, everyone involved in all of that. So if you haven't already done so, check that out. You just posted, by the way, I think it was an amazing piece, a 75 player dynasty ranking there. If you haven't checked that out, check it out. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, Tyler? Because it's not just a list of 75 players. You actually break it down by tiers. You give a little breakdown, a little bit of analysis for each of these players. Talk a little about that because I find it very useful and helpful, given that a lot of people are starting their dynasty drafts at this time.
Yeah, I feel like maybe 5 to 10 years ago, we saw a big boom in the dynasty landscape where people started joining more and more dynasties, and lots of startups were happening left and right. And not every dynasty league is formed the same. There's different scoring formats, different league size and settings. So I kind of wanted to make something that was kind of helpful for people in multiple leagues. I created three different sets of rankings: a top 48 for a typical PPR league, a let's say a 12 team PPR, very vanilla settings. Then I also made another top 48 for those that play in Superflex tight end premium, which seems to be a growing trend. And then I made one very, very niche, the top 75 for those that play in the Superflex tight end premium IDP format. IDP being individual defensive players, adding those players into the mix, which is often not a common occurrence when you look at rankings because IDP players, the league settings vary so much, whether it be big play scoring, which is interceptions, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, sacks, versus tackle heavy scoring. So I went with a balanced approach, a league setting that kind of takes the middle road between both big play and tackle heavy. Putting those players into tiers alongside their offensive counterparts, it's definitely going to skew more towards the offensive players. It's typically how these mixed rankings go, but I thought it was really helpful for anyone in those types of formats or those types of leagues that go that deep. And it also offers some sleepers in the back end with it going 75 players deep.
Yeah, I actually I was reading the article because so I'm in a dynasty league, the Football Diehards Dynasty League with Mike Dempsey, Bob Harris, Jeff Manson's in it as well, Rich Mileto. A lot of people are in it. And I drew it's 32 teams. But there's the player pools doubled, right? So there's two of every player. I had the third overall pick. Obviously, without doubt, the first two picks were Genty. And this is an IDP league as well. So I was ecstatic because I got Hunter. He's going to get all the defensive stats and all the receiving stats. So I was like, this is a bonus right here. I have McMillan like in a regular where there's no IDP. I have McMillan ahead of Hunter like in my rookie rankings. But in this specific, scoring setting, I feel like Hunter is you can even make a strong case for him being, the number one pick, where you're getting all of the stats on, the IDP and offense. So, but yeah, man, it's a really great that article that piece is really great. If you haven't checked it out, very helpful too. I checked it out. And awesome job there, dude. Awesome job. You always put up great work, but that, as usual, man, just crushed it with that one right there. So I
Thank you.
really enjoyed it, man. Really did.
Thanks,
Um,
man. Yeah, I always try to make content that I, as a reader, would want to consume. So I feel like that if you have that mentality, you're going to produce great content week in and
yeah,
week out.
absolutely, dude. Absolutely. All right. So, like I said earlier, man, we're gonna be talking. We're gonna go division. We're gonna do team previews for all 32 NFL teams. I thought the best way to break it down would be we'll cover every podcast, every episode. We'll cover one division. You and I talked about that. And today we're gonna cover AFC East. Right? We have Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins, the New England Patriots, and the New York Jets in this division. And now that we have free agency behind us and the NFL draft is behind us, all the dust is kind of settling right now, right? Like we're seeing all of the pieces come together for these teams and what their plans are and what we can start expecting. Obviously, there's still a lot of time between now and the start of the season. A lot can happen. Players can be moved. There's always going to be injuries. There's going to be players that surpass another player in the depth chart. There's competitions, like all of that you got to watch out. But right now, we're going to be taking a look at how things stand now and kind of what we think is going to happen here for some of these teams. And just, for perspective, when you look at this AFC East, you had the Bills dominating this division last year. They went 13-4. The next best team was Miami, 8-9, which they they regressed from the season before, right? Like this was a team that there was a lot of high expectations, and last year, 8-9 was just an underwhelming season for I think that franchise given the expectations. They injuries piled up for them. They just had issues with the offensive line. So we'll talk about that here. Then the Jets 5-12 last year, and then New England Patriots 4-13. I don't think there's any surprises there. They're a team kind of in rebuild mode. But I think for the most part, a lot of these teams in the AFC East did a pretty solid job at improving their roster and planning ahead, right? So we'll start off with the Bills, Tyler. And, when you look at what happened here this offseason with them, so they lost Matt Collins, a receiver. I don't think this is a massive loss for them. They lost Kair Elam, the cornerback there. They did have a good draft. They did add some players in free agency. They did keep some players. They restructured some contracts there. Shakir, you have Milano still there. Terrell Bernard, Christian Benford, all these players that were able to retain there. Let's talk a little bit about Buffalo here. What you're thinking? Is there something that a player that they lost or anything like? Let's take a look at this team and what we can expect in 2025.
Yeah, this was a team that once again won their fifth straight AFC East title. Josh Allen finally won the MVP. You talked about some of their transactions and players lost. I think adding Amari Cooper to that list makes a lot of sense given what they expected from him and didn't really get. Russell Douglas, a slot corner that played very impactful snaps for them. Von Miller, Austin Johnson, Jordan Phillips, guys along the defensive line. They just kind of lost a lot of guys in the secondary and along the trenches in the defense that I thought were very impactful. Um, Looking from like a fantasy perspective, the only player of note that I thought that they brought in was Josh Palmer. I thought that was a significant signing for them. And then we look at their NFL draft, and it was mostly defensive focused. They spent all of their premium capital on defensive pieces, again, attacking the trenches and attacking the secondary to mitigate those losses. They did re-sign cornerback Christian Benford, great cornerback, but adding help from him was very, very smart in their round one selection of Maxwell Hairston. But yeah, I think that's what they really did was just try to fix their defense, which I think kind of fell apart in that Chiefs game. They kind of allowed too many points. You can throw a little bit of blame on Dalton Kincaid if you want. I won't blame you if you do that. But the defense really, I think, when you look at this offense last year, they were number two in points per game. They were number two in EPA per dropback, number three in EPA per rush. They were just so successful offensively that spending a lot of the resources this offseason on the defense felt like the right thing for general manager Brandon Beane to do.
Yeah. So when So I look at the Bills, and you mentioned it, right? They focus primarily on the defense in this draft. Like when you look at their first five picks of the NFL draft, they went cornerback, they went interior defensive line, they went edge, interior defense, and then safety. Like they're really focusing on defense, which was an issue for them last year. Like when you look at this team, when you look at the postseason, like I feel like that's really what hurt them. Specifically, like they struggled a lot on third down, right? And I think they needed to, improve and beef up this defense. Yes, they lost some pieces offensive, in the offense. But again, I think that when you look at the addition, I think Palmer, that's a very sneaky addition. You mentioned it. Like for me, look, he's not a great receiver, but I do think he's a little bit underrated. I think he brings more to the table than advertised. And I think, the experience there. Do I expect that he's going to be an every week starter in fantasy football? Probably not. I do think that this an offense is going to continue to spread the ball. I think Shakir is going to be the primary guy, as we've seen. And I think Palmer's just going to give an extra option for Josh Allen. You got Keon Coleman there. It didn't really pan out as a rookie. But again, he's growing another year in the system, another year getting that chemistry. I think they're going to be helpful. They added Elijah Moore. I don't think that's huge, but I do think that gives you a depth at the slot receiver. A player that I think is a solid NFL receiver. So they've added some pieces here. They took a receiver in the seventh round. I'm not really too interested in that. I'm just giving what we have here. So I guess the good thing here that we can discuss is the backfield, right? Because there was concerns about whether James Cook with the situation. They have James Cook, they have Ray Davis. I think this backfield, we know what we're going to get here from this team. When you look at the offensive line, it really didn't, do all that much in the draft or anything. It was primarily defense, right? And I think that when you look at what they've done, right? They added Boza on the edge there in free agency. They added White, in free agency there. So I think this defense is going to be better in 2025. I think they're the favorite in the AFC East again. And I think at the beginning of the year, this is going to be a team that we're once again talking about being a contender for a championship. I think that they've plugged in some of the holes, Tyler, and I think this team could take that next step. I know we've been saying that for a couple of years. Maybe this is a year, maybe this is a year, but I do think they've plugged in some of the massive holes, or not massive, but some of the holes that they had really to in order to them for them to get to that next level here. Do you agree with that? Do you feel like they're finally now in the place where they can get to that next level?
Armando, I think I've spent each of the last 2 or 3 years spending tickets on Buffalo Bills to win the Super Bowl. Uh, they have not, unfortunately, gotten there. The Chiefs have thwarted them 4 of the last 5 years. It's so funny that the Chiefs specifically have been the ones that have ended their Super Bowl hopes. Um, I'm probably going to go back to the well again. Maybe it's Lucy and the football being pulled away from me again. I'm pulling the Charlie Brown swing and miss. But I still like this Buffalo Bills squad. They're minus 240 to win the division over on FanDuel right now. That's one of the highest odds available out there. And when you look division by division, um, I think the squad is really set up for a lot of offensive success. Continuity is something we don't often talk about with offensive line, but they bring back all five of last year's starters. I think that's huge. Wasn't exactly an elite run blocking unit. They were middle of the pack in both run block win rate per ESPN and yards before contact per attempt, but they were terrific in pass block win rate, helping Josh Allen find some time and letting him work his option plays. And this offense just seems really well oiled. Like they know what they're doing. They added some pieces. I think the Palmer piece specifically really helps add some verticality to their game. Last year, I know you're a Keon Coleman fan, but I got to say a bad stat on him. Among all receivers with 100 plus routes last year, he was 91st out of 91 in average separation score. Josh Palmer, on the other hand, top five. So I think Palmer adds some verticality there in terms of adding some big playability, which could mitigate the loss of Mac Hollins, which again he was a big play guy, barefoot phenom, fun to watch on the field. I expect Josh Palmer to be a guy that I mean he could eclipse his ADP right now. I think he's wide receiver 52 if I'm not mistaken. Um, Let me double check that real quick before I start giving out false information. Um, he's wide receiver 69, pardon me. So I think he could easily eclipse that rate. Um, then we talk about the run game. James Cook, 16 touchdowns last year on the ground after scoring two and two the seasons prior. Now enters a contract year. What do they do with him? That's what I'm eager to see. His rushing attempts per game, I think it was 12.9 attempts per game. That's not crazy for a running back of his stature, a guy that finished top 12 in the season. That said, over 40% of his fantasy production last year came solely from touchdowns. Our guy Rich Mileto does a scoring dependency chart every single year. It'll be part of our draft guide once again, launching June 1st or June 2nd. We'll see when it comes out. But that scoring dependency shows where a player's fantasy production comes from: touchdowns, receptions, yards, etc. And no player exceeded that 40% mark last year. So this is a massive, massive. Um, I don't know. I want to say it's like a warning bell's going off in my brain for. I'm immediately thinking of regression. Um, how do you feel about James Cook right now? Because I know his ADP is probably pretty high of people wanting to chase this high-scoring Bills team. The fact that he was pretty well ahead of Ray Davis in terms of efficiency and production, and the fact that it's James Cook. He's got the notoriety, he's got the big year. Are you interested in buying James Cook at current cost right now?
I feel like you're buying at premium, right? Because I think he's going to be once again very touchdown dependent. So the opportunities went down significantly from 2023 to 2024. He had 291 opportunities in 23, 245 in 24. But yeah, he scored many more fantasy points given the 16 touchdowns that you mentioned. He had four combined touchdowns in the previous 2 years, rushing touchdowns, that is. Last year, he had a total of 18, right? So I feel like we're chasing touchdowns, and we have to remember like Josh Allen is utilized a lot in the red zone. This is not Baltimore where they don't utilize Lamar Jackson all that much in the red zone. No, Buffalo uses all right their guy in the red zone a lot, and Josh Allen. I think if there's regression, right? Like what would you say is a fair number to project for touchdowns? Like I feel like it's a very wide range right now, given the fact that he went from two rushing touchdowns to 16. I think the fair number would be nine, between 9 and 11. I feel like that's a fair number. So what kind of he finished what? RB8 last year, scoring 16 touchdowns. Like keep this in mind. Or a total of 18. So he finished RB8. So he couldn't even crack top five by with scoring 18 touchdowns last year. I don't know if I want to pay top dollar for Cook. I feel like you can get exposure there, but maybe I'll buy the dip on Ray Davis, right? And kind of secure that backfield. And maybe his opportunities become a little bit more this year. And you're not pay. I think what's Ray Davis's price at this? It's not as expensive as it was last year, right?
Yeah, it's 150 plus right now in ADP.
Buy the dip on Davis because the same thing as last year, right? There's going to be opportunities. I do think eventually he'll fall into some opportunities. If Cook misses any time, he's going to be your guy. Um, but I don't know, man. Are you investing at Cook at this price point right now?
Yeah, he's going to the 3-4 turn right now on underdog ADP. Again, the underdog ADP is brand new. It just surfaced after the NFL draft, which is what we're early May right now, so it's about 2 or 3 weeks old. But it's kind of solidified already. The time to draft, if you want to try to beat ADP and adjust ADP, is right now. I want to mention that for any best ball drafters. I'll have best ball rankings on the site very shortly. But yeah, I think that's a steep price to pay for James Cook. I will mention last year the Bills led the league in rushing touchdowns. Kind of obvious with James Cook putting up his stats and with Josh Allen throwing in another 12 on the ground. Um, but they were just eighth in passing touchdowns. So they ran for 32 on the ground. They passed for 30 through the air. I could see a bit more of a split, skewing more in the passing touchdown rate rather than the rushing touchdown rate in 2025. So yeah, I'm with you where I think that we're paying a premium right now for James Cook. Um, and I'm kind of with you too, where I think Ray Davis may be the better bet in terms of a value selection. Um, Curious your thoughts on Khalil Shakir. This is a guy who led the squad in target share last year. He's always been hyper efficient, like over these last 2, 3 years since coming out. Um, Very, very efficient in terms of like catch rate, yards after catch per reception, EPA, those kind of advanced stats. The problem is he's maxing out at like a 21% target share, which is like last year it was 6.5 targets per game. I kind of draw the line there, man. Like 6.5 targets per game for a team's number one receiver. Yeah, it's great. It's tethered to Josh Allen. That's awesome. Maybe those 6.5 targets translate to 5 to 6 catches on good days. But again, we're looking at 5 to 6 catches on a guy that's a slot heavy receiver, probably not going to score a lot of big ceiling weeks. He's only scored 20 plus PPR points in two of his 40 plus games of his career. I don't know if I can do it. What are your thoughts on Shakir?
I'm viewing him as a wide receiver three, like kind of where he was. Like last year, he finished what, wide receiver 37, I think it is, or 38 in PPR scoring. That's kind of what I view him as. Like you mentioned it, like we get stuck in like the target share. Yeah, 20 plus percent target share seems like a lot, but the average 6.6 targets per game, like you mentioned, it's not a lot. That is not a lot of targets. Like I ideally you're getting 8 targets per game. Like if you have that kind of market share, like I feel like that feels a little bit safer, a little bit higher of a floor. I still think he's going to be a weekly floor option for you in PPR settings, but I don't know if there's that much more upside, right? Like if you're looking for a league winner, I don't know if he's going to give you that, right? Like feel like he's a good piece to mix in with two other receivers, and you're going to get your consistency out of that position with Shakir. Curious, I don't have the underdog ADP right now in front of me, but curious as to where he's going right now, Tyler.
He's wide receiver 42 right now. I'll list a few names above and below him. Above him, Debo, Jacoby Myers, Stephon Diggs, Ricky Pearsall, and below him, Jaden Reed, George Pickens, Matthew Golden. That kind of range. That's what we're looking at here. And we're talking underdog right now. I'll just say spike week wise, I'm probably looking elsewhere other than this Buffalo wideout.
I think so. I think that's a fair way to view it, right? Like if you're in a best balls format, that might not be your option, like because you're just getting a floor. It depends on the other receivers you have already. Like building a receiving group is very important. We'll have another podcast covering all that for sure. Um, but I think in that range, I rather go in with a Pickens. Like I know I'm going to get probably 1 or 2 spike weeks, and maybe more, right? We really don't know. Um, or another player who's going to give me some really game-changing weeks. Like, and I don't know if Shakir is going to do that enough in a best ball setting. Now, in a season-long format where I am just like in a head-to-head situation where I'm just looking to win each week, Shakir might be that guy because I'm going to be more comfortable starting him on a weekly basis than I am maybe a George Pickens or so. So maybe that's how you kind of treat that situation. But I think his ADP is fair. I don't think it's inflated. Um, I that's kind of where I have him. Like that's in that 36 to 45, 46 range. Like kind of where I have him. On my board right now. Where I agree with you when you said Josh Palmer is going to exceed expectations at his current ADP at, in that 68, 69 range. Um, wide receiver four, wide receiver five, is that where you're at with him?
Yeah, I think five's accurate. You're not paying that price for him though. He's wide receiver six in pricing, but yeah, I think he has a chance to exceed that. Um, I'm curious how quickly this new secondary gels and comes together with the context of if it doesn't come together quickly and Buffalo's forced to throw all 4 quarters. This was a team that ranked top 10 in pass rate over expectation last year. They could certainly put up points in a hurry if needed and push to do so. Often they just haven't been forced to do so. They've been able to play slow ball. They've been able to run the ball, milk the clock. But yeah, offensive coordinator Joe Brady. Excited to see what he does once again.
Yeah. Dalton Kincaid, man. Disappointing year two, right? I guess
Mm.
is the way we could say it. I think expectations were a little bit higher. He finished tight end 30 in PPR scoring after finishing tight end 11 the previous season. Where are we at with him? Because so he had a 20% market share as far as targets are concerned. And then he was averaging what, 5.8 targets per game. Does it increase in 2025?
See, I don't think it does. I still think this is an offense that's going to spread the ball around quite a bit, and 18 to 20% target share, that feels right on the nose for Kincaid, who last year suffered a knee injury midway through the year, really struggled, didn't clear 60 yards in a single game, 2 total touchdowns, 13 total games played. Just the raw stats there, just it shows a whiff for anyone who grabbed him round four, round five last year. He's now going round 11, I believe, in ADP. So people have appropriately dropped him back. Um, but I do want to note that the ability to earn targets is kind of a skill set. And the fact that he was still earning targets despite being hampered and not at 100% paints him in a positive light for a regression to exceed this round 11 ADP. So if you miss out on the elite tight end groupings for your fantasy squad, I think he's a fine selection round 11, if that's where his ADP sticks. Um, just because the targets are predictive, and if you're able to earn targets year after year, even while injured, that points towards some upside there. And this offense, again, I just can't get over the fact that they were number two in points per game, 30.9 points per game. I want my tight ends tethered to offenses that score touchdowns. If I'm not going to get a bunch of receptions from my tight ends, give me the touchdown upside. And I think Kincaid checks that box.
And when we're talking about tight ends, I feel like that 5 to 6 target per game is very fair, right? It's not the same as a
Mm.
receiver. We talked about when I said Shakir, oh, six, 6 and point something targets. That's not enough. For a tight end, I feel like that's fair. Like I feel like 5 to 6 targets, 5 to 7 targets is very fair. And I think that's feasible again for him. You mentioned, the Bills, they were sixth in scoring attempts per game last year inside the red zone. And when you look at their offense and their team, I'm pulling it up right now, but you look at their red zone. Dalton Kincaid led that team in red zone targets. All right, he had 10 targets. He had 17.2 target share inside the 20-yard line. The next two guys were Coleman and Shakir. They each had 8, but Kincaid did lead the team. He missed time and he still led the team in red zone targets. So he is utilized in this part of the field. So I like what you said there. Like if you're gonna attack a tight end, or any player, right, and an offense is scoring a lot, I think looking at those kind of numbers is something to do. So he was utilizing this part of the field often there last year. Um, Anything else here? I don't. Do we have to spend any time on Josh Allen? Like
No, I don't think so.
QB1, guys.
Yeah,
QB1.
yeah. I looked at his finishes over the last 5 years. QB1, QB1, QB2, QB1, QB4.
Yeah.
So
I
he's
don't overthink
currently,
it.
yeah, he's currently priced as the highest priced quarterback right now in ADP, going at that 2-3 turn. I guess that's a conversation worth having. Is that opportunity cost worth it to you? Let's do it from two angles: a redraft start sit league and a best ball league.
No, it's not. It's not for me. Like, so if okay, so I do intend, like I did last year, to get to that 100 lineup mark. There's gonna be a lot of times where I do draft him there, but that's because of volume based and I'm trying to get exposure. So it's basically diversifying my portfolio in best ball leagues. That's what I'm gonna be doing when I do that. But I usually prefer to hold off on the quarterback. Like I know that Josh Allen is a difference maker. He truly is. There's no denying it. Like what he brings to the table. I don't think you really can say that about any other quarterback because he's been doing it for so consistent at such a high level. You just read the numbers there. You could maybe make a case for Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts because of their rushing ability or whatnot. But I feel like Josh Allen has been a model of consistency, like since day one. When he blew up and man, it's tough to make. So if you do it, I'm not going to argue against it. Am I going to do it? No. I'd rather get the wide receivers and running back because I do feel like there's a significant drop off, right, between those, that tier of running back and receivers compared to where you're going to have to get your next receiver or running back in draft if you do go with that early quarterback. I know you have a different opinion, right? Like I think you do like the idea of taking the Josh Allen in that round, right?
Not for a redraft start sit league. I will be doing it much more in best ball where you do get rewarded for when you have those 400 plus fantasy point seasons, which Allen's done 4 of the last 5 years. He's just consistently putting up top end production. When you look at it from a season long view and on a week to week level, his ability to put up top 3 weeks is insane. Um, so in best ball, I'm definitely going for it, and I don't think he's a player you necessarily need to stack or prioritize stacking. You can make it a secondary part of your attack plan, but just Allen on his own, like the 12 touchdowns on the ground last year, 15 the season prior. This dude does not need a pairing play to get to his ceiling on a given week. So for that reason, I like him on Underdog and those types of websites where it's tournaments and not like you facing a group of 11 and a small subset of 12. I'd rather do it for tournaments specifically, just for the unparalleled upside whenever he's able to finally hit that the 30 burgers, the 40 burgers that really change a week. In redraft, though, I'm with you. I think I'd rather spend the opportunity cost at running backs and receivers, given what they offer. And yeah, I will say I'm very into the elite quarterback again this season, but the pricing for this year, I think drafters are catching up. Where we're circling back to like the 2010s, where early drafters were a commonplace. Like Aaron Rodgers was in the talk for like the 101 back then. Um, I think we're going to see a lot of round two, round three, round four quarterbacks in home leagues this year.
Yeah, and maybe this is the year, right, where you make a shift. Like maybe this is the year you do it a little bit differently in your drafts. Yeah. Um, yeah, man. I usually like to wait. Like last year, I was getting Burrow a lot. Joe Burrow. I think it was around 5, 6, like in that turn, often. So you can always find those kind of guys, but there's no one like Josh Allen. I mean, last year you said 40 burgers. Last year, in week 14, 55.3 fantasy points. He followed it up in week 15 with 44.9. Like those are weeks 14 and 15. Those are your playoffs, right? Like in some leagues, that might be your playoff or like right there in like you're not losing those weeks. Like you're sitting, you're the rest of your team could do dog shit and you're not going to lose that week with that kind of performance. All right, Tyler, anything else on the Buffalo Bills?
No, I think we hit them pretty well here.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Miami Dolphins. And as a fan of the team, I'm not gonna lie to you, they've been the most disappointing of this AFC East teams this offseason when I look at the draft and when I look at free agency. So they lost Raheem Mostert, they lost Smythe, they lost safety Javon Holland, they lost Calais Campbell. Um, Look, they needed defensive line, Tyler. I know that they needed, especially interior. They spent 3 draft picks on interior defensive line. And what bothers me here is that our offensive line was a big, big weakness for us last year, and they didn't draft anyone. Actually, they did draft a guard, but they really didn't add much depth at the position. And I am going to be very concerned this upcoming season with this offensive line once again. And when you look at what this offense does, they're a time-based defense, right? Like everything's on timing. And if you're disrupting the timing here for Tua, I think it's going to cause problems again. You have the issues with Tyreek Hill, right? I do think that they added some key pieces here. I like the addition, of Alexander Massey. It gives you depth at the running back position. You get back up here with Zach Wilson. They added James Daniels, the offensive guard. So they've added some pieces, right? But I still think that I don't know, man. They could have done a little bit better. When you look at the draft board, when you look at some of the players there, I think this team could have done a little bit better both in the draft and free agency. Talk to me about that before we jump into, position by position here.
Yeah, the draft is a little bit frustrating of an event for me as a guy who had some money on the Dolphins betting getting a secondary member. I thought they'd go cornerback, given the Jalen Ramsey talk, the fact that they're starting Storm Duck right now, Cam Smith on the outside. It does not look great on paper, especially if that Ramsey trade goes through. I think I heard some talks yesterday about him possibly reuniting with the Rams. Um, that said, I mean, when you look at like your front four, I get it. I get it. The trenches are set. You guys have a lot of capital, and you've got some great veteran free agents and Bradley Chubb added for or traded for, pardon me. Um, that I like what you guys have as far as the defensive front. The offensive front, though, is a complete catastrophe for an offense that wants to run the ball as heavily as Mike McDaniel wants to. The guard, I can't even say his last name. The second round pick you guys got out of Arizona,
Yeah,
Jonah.
Jonah.
We'll call him Jonah S.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, yeah. I know he was graded pretty highly. He's a big guy, 336 pounds. I do like that in terms of investing in the offensive line. I and the tackles I think had dried up by the time you guys were on the clock at number 13. So I get the pick going defense instead of offensive line, but I'm with you where I thought they might have been more active in free agency. Um, I mean, it was no surprise Teron Armstead was retiring, so just to let that go and not address it seems like malpractice. This was a team that was 26th in run block win rate, 24th in rush success rate, 31st in EPA for rush. Again, this is a team that wants to run the ball, and they just are hamstringing themselves, hoping HN can continue to break off massive gains, which really dried up this past year relative to 2023. So I don't know. I thought that uh, this offensive line needed maulers. They got one or two in terms of the interior of the offensive line, but I'm looking right now at your projected left tackle, Patrick Paul,
Mm.
second rounder from last year. Did not do that great. Yeah, yeah, okay.
Ugh. Ugh.
What are your thoughts there? That's a big glaring weakness, right?
Yeah, it is a weakness. And then James Daniels, like, fine, right?
Fine, yeah.
But there are some clips of him getting smoked by by a pretty wide margin. Like, like he had no, like he didn't even put his hands on the defender. Um, Aaron Brewer, okay. You know, Jonah S. And we need Austin Jackson to really, like, take that next step, right? Like
Mm.
really be that first rounder he was. Like, I feel like that's really what you need him to be. Because what, he was a first rounder in 2020, like five years now. Like, you it should be the time, right? So I feel like this is a massive weakness for this offense. And they were 27th in run block per PFF last year, 20th in pass block per PFF last year. I don't see that improving. And you would see it, right? You mentioned Armstead retired. You see how big of a drop off we had with this offensive line when Armstead was out. Like, it was significant. Like, if you were watching these games, every game, it was very notable. Um, I'm interested to see what happens here. You got a couple of new pieces in the line that was already not living up to expectation, Tyler. I'm concerned, and when you have a quarterback like Tua Tagovailoa who has the history of injuries that he does, right, by taking some hits, and you have to really protect him. And I don't think the team has done their best ability to protect him. So I am genuinely concerned for the run game. Devon Achane, we're going to talk about him, but I mean, his draft stock is through the roof right now. So you're talking about his, someone like him that, look, he can create his plays, but if you have guys back there by the time you're getting the ball, it's going to be difficult. Um, I wish they would have done better with the offensive line. I agree with you 100%. Like, this defensive line, this front is going to be very difficult to contain. They're going to be applying pressure to opposing offenses, et cetera, et cetera. But the secondary is an issue. This offensive line is an issue. And we don't know what's going to happen with Tyreek Hill yet. Like, that's another factor that you really have to pay close attention to. There's clearly disgruntled there, right? Like, he does not want to be on the team. He's publicly said that he wants to be traded. Um, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better in Miami. And I'm just going to be keeping a close eye on everything, Tyler.
Yeah, I look at this run first attack, and I mentioned all the advanced stats that don't paint him in a great light. 31st in EPA per rush, 27th in yards per carry. The explosive plays from Achan. I mean, he went from gaining a gain of 10 plus yards on over 20% of his carries. So one out of every five went for 10 plus carries. That dropped to just 10.3%, essentially halved in 2024. He saw sizable setbacks in missed tackles forced per attempt and yards after contact per attempt. He went from like this efficiency darling to a guy who was just kind of very pedestrian. And I really just look at the line as the thing to blame. Like, you mentioned them getting a little push up front. They were number three in highest rate of runs that were stuffed at the line of scrimmage or went for negative gains. There's just so much work this offensive line needs to do where it's really a question mark as we enter 2025, how much of a step forward, if it's a step forward, for 2025 and what this run game can do. But do you want to focus on the pass game real quick? Because
Yes.
I look at Tua, who missed some significant time last year, six missed games. And in those games without Tua, this offense averaged a league low 13.3 points per game. Snoop Huntley started in five of those six. Um, Not great. He's no longer with the team. They added former number two overall pick, Zach Wilson, from the Jets, who kind of flamed out, went to the Broncos for a year, now joins Miami. I kind of like him as a reclamation project, but not super hopeful. But I think there's at least some optimism relative to what we saw from Huntley last season. Um, yeah, I'm curious what happens with Tyreek because he's kind of the stir that or the straw that stirs the drink. Yeah, that saying. Because when healthy, Tua has averaged about 20 fantasy points per game over the last 3 seasons. And I think that's really notable because we don't see those types of performances from non-mobile quarterbacks. But when you have guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle that can just take the lid off the defense, you can get by. And if Hill's no longer in the picture, he's entering his age 31 season. He's his route participation rates have plummeted 3 straight years, went from 81.6 to 76 to 73.0% last year. So sure, he's getting the 16, 17 games played in terms of like the final box score stats, but he's out there on 2/3 of plays, 3/4 of plays, and often just running routes half-assed. Um, when he knows he's not getting the ball. Let me say that. So to me, I think Tyreek Hill is a really tough click at wide receiver 12 in ADP. That's a bit pricey for a guy that has so many question marks and unknowns. Does he even play for Miami? Because he wanted that trade at the beginning of the offseason. I think we talked about that in January, February. Have you yet to see anything come to fruition with that? Maybe there's a fire sale at some point in like July or August where Miami just says, let's rebuild. We've got some young pieces here. We've got a good defense. Let's try to run the ball heavily, get what we can from selling Tyreek, get what we can from selling Ramsey, and try to rebuild and retool this unit. Um, Jalen Waddle, disastrous season, failing to reach 60 plus yards and 12 of 15 games, a career low 3.9 receptions per game. This was a guy who was like a PPR magnet his first season prior to Tyreek entering the fold. But I'm just throwing my hands up. It's a year of transition for me with Miami. Um, I have a tough time investing. I'm going to be honest. The pass game has a lot of question marks. The offensive line has a lot of question marks. And for that reason, I'm largely going to go light, quote unquote, with my draft portfolio when we talk about total number of shares and stuff with players for Miami, just because there's so many question marks and unknowns.
I agree 100%. I'm concerned. I'm not buying Tyreek at his price. So you and I and Russell, we've talked about that on other shows, and he's a sell candidate for me right now. I think as things stand today, like if I can sell him, I will. I'm not in the business of buying into him, but I think he finished yeah, so he finished wide receiver 18 last year in PPR scoring. He was participating 80% of the snaps, like you mentioned, just some of that when if you're really watching these games, like he's in and out of the field a lot. It's not, it's not something you see with, with the guys like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. They get it at different ages. But you're talking about a high draft investment here with Hill, going back to last year. So no, I'm not buying Hill myself. I agree with you with Waddle. Um, he took a big step back, and if he's the number one now, like if let's say they do trade Hill, right? Now Waddle's gonna get the best defender. Like that's not something he was getting when he had his big season. Like because he was opposite of him was Tyreek Hill. How would that impact him? Like if he's now seeing the best defender on the, do you think that impacts him, or do you think the volume alone is going to help him out?
I think the volume would help him substantially. The fact that he's getting, I feel like Tyreek's been the 1A with Waddle being a distant 2. It's not like a 1A, 1B situation. Um, Hill's targets per out run last year, 0.25. That's a massive drop from the season prior where it was 0.38, one of the best in the league. Um, so just to see that type of volume transfer over to Waddle, I think would be a massive boon for his fantasy success. And he's a guy that can win on like short little dump offs and down the field. I like the way they utilize Waddle. I just wish he got more volume, which has been like his biggest Achilles heel at this point. But add more volume, I think Waddle's definitely in play for a guy that can surpass his ADP and really be a surpriser given what we've seen. I mean, we've seen it before. Like he's capable of 1,000 yards, capable of producing at various points on the field. I really like him, and I think he has immense contingent upside. If Tyreek were to be dealt, if he were to suffer an injury. So yeah, I'm still in on Waddle. I think especially when we look at the tertiary receivers, there's like a big drop down.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Going back to the quarterback position, we know Tua is going to be the starter. They added Zach Wilson. Interested to hear your thoughts on Quinn Ewers. Like, I know he's a seventh round guy. Um, do you think he surpasses Wilson here, or do you think he's going to have an opportunity to surpass Wilson as a backup, or no?
Well, I look at Texas and I look at all the wide receivers that have come out over the last 2 years that have been absolute burners down the field, and the fact that Ewers could never consistently get them the ball is just a massive red flag to me. Um, he's kind of entering the same situation with Tyreek and Waddle, two burners as well. I just don't foresee it happening well. I think there's a reason why he lasted until round 7.
All right, I wanted to pick your brain on that because I saw that they added him there in the last round, and just interesting to see what your thoughts were on him. I do agree. I think Wilson will be that number two guy, like for them. But I do think they'll have three quarterbacks on their roster. Do think Miami will keep three quarterbacks on their roster there. If you look at, I think it's pretty straightforward when you look at the receiver position, right? Like when you look at Hill and you look at Waddle. They accounted for 37% of the target share last year. I think you're going to see, that kind of opportunity for them, assuming that everyone's there. They're going to be demanding a lot of the target share. Jonnu Smith, 20% target share last year for Miami, 6.6 targets per game. Are you are you buying Jonnu Smith this year? I feel like he's someone that sneakily has benefited from Hill being on and off the field and Hill not producing, because Hill had 7.1 targets per game last year. When you look at the 6.6 for Smith, that's more than Waddle. Right? Waddle had 5.5 targets per game last year. I think that kind of opportunity is here to stay for Smith. I know there were some people saying, oh, they could have drafted Tyler Warren. I've seen things like that. But I think they believed in Smith, man. And I think that he did a really solid job. Once he got going, he did not slow down. Where are you at with Smith this year from a fantasy standpoint?
What a breakout. 13.1 fantasy points per game, tight end 5 finish. He's a move tight end that can block, which I think has been missing from this McDaniel offense ever since he's tried to get it established since leaving San Francisco. He never had that Kittle role. It was always taken up by Gesicki, who's kind of more of a route runner than a blocker, or Durham Smythe, who's been more of a blocker than a route runner. Now he's finally got that happy marriage between the two with Jonnu, who absolute breakout. I also like to think of him as to a safety blanket. There were 32 QBs last year that dropped back 300 times or more last year. Tua had the lowest depth of target, 6.1 yards, dead last among that group. When we talk about him still missing a left tackle of note, I think we'll continue to see pass rushers target that guy specifically. And we'll continue to see the shallow targets to Jonnu once again and let his yak skill set shine on those quick, easy, shallow crossers. We see it all the time with these tight ends where it's just a simple drag route where it's the safety play for the QB. And Tua, I mean, he doesn't work through his progressions at the best, like the best of the best quarterbacks. So, uh, first read, not available. Let me just check it down to Johnny and let him rumble and gain some yards, break a tackle, and then get some more. This guy got career highs across the board. I'm buying again. I think he is a fantastic selection in terms of picking him up for free agency last offseason. And he was a very popular sleeper choice. We were talking about him pretty often on our streams all summer long last year. Didn't envision a top 5 fantasy ceiling, but yowza, I'm in again. This guy got 111 targets last year. Let's roll it back.
Yeah, I top 10 tight end on my board, for
Yeah,
sure. And I think that kind of production is here to stay. I truly do. We saw it. We saw it when you mentioned the McDaniel when he was in San Francisco. We saw it with Kittle. I thought we were going to get that with Gesicki, but the lack of pass blocking skills for Gesicki just I think that's what prevented him. And then they never had anyone like Smith or like that. After Smythe was not that guy. He was just
right.
not that guy. Um, I don't think so. Before we jump to the backfield here, Tyler, I don't think that when you look at the receiving group here, it's Hill, Waddle, then Smith, right? And Jonathan Smith. Those are the three guys. I don't think there's enough opportunities for anyone else on this offense in the passing game. We'll talk about the backfield and how they're involved in the passing game as well. But do you see any other pass catches here in Miami that you look at? It's like, okay, maybe I'm intrigued. Not for me. So I'm wondering where you're at with that.
I agree. Last year they were bottom 3 in utilization of 11 personnel, which is 3 receivers on the field. So we very rarely saw that slot guy out there, or 3 receivers at once. They brought in Nick Westbrook-Akine from Tennessee, who ran as hot as you could in the touchdown department, scoring from various depths all over the field, sporting a near 50-50 split between slot and perimeter. But it was a 2-year, $6 million contract. This is like just a hair above the vet minimum. Like, I don't think this really matters that much. Malik Washington, last year's round six pick, 26 receptions on the team. Don't think that matters that much. I'm with you. I think we're just looking at the heavy hitters here with Jonnu being really that you can say the number two target. I don't think that's outlandish to say. If not number three for sure. But yeah, it's the two receivers and Jonnu.
Yeah, I agree. And just to add to Westbrook Ikine, he had 32 receptions, 9 touchdowns last year. That's insane. That's insane. All right, let's talk about the backfield. I think this is important here. Raheem Mostert, no longer with the team. He averaged 8.3 opportunities per game last year. It's not like he averaged a ton. Devon Achane took a massive leap forward. My concerns about him of durability. He played all 17 games, so that never came to fruition. He was durable. He averaged 17.1 opportunities per game, 11.9 rush attempts, 5.1 targets there. He's being drafted very high right now. All right. Where are you at with Devon Achane? Are you buying his current price tag, or are you a little bit gun shy here?
Yeah, he's currently going off the board in the middle of round two. And I'm buying at that. We talked about the offensive inefficiencies with the rushing attack. Sure, it took a step backward, but let's be a little positive here on this, a little optimism. If he were to retain that 2023 rushing productivity and those elite breakaway rates, the missed tackles forced, the big chunk gains, and combine his 5.1 targets per game, like you said, which was number two among all backs behind only Alvin Kamara. Let me also mention Achane led all running backs, pardon me, in receiving yards with almost 600 receiving yards. There's a chance he finishes as the number one overall running back, and he's going off the board in the middle of round two. I love grabbing him middle of round two if you can get it, sure. But even at the 1-2 turn, if you're drafting that at that spot, I'm very confident going that route too. Maybe you go receiver and Achane as your first two selections, and I'd be very happy leaving my fantasy draft that way. Um, sure, the rushing line is full of holes, and we've kind of beat that horse pretty good right now. Um, but I'm comfortable with that. And when we look at like the other backs on the squad, Jalen Wright, Alexander Madison, Ollie Gordon, he's a round six back, but he did pick up 1,700 yards in 2023. Just really had a massive fall off in 2024. I see Gordon really not contending for RB2 status, but more of the short yardage and goal line work as a 225-pound back, biggest of the group right here, and more of Jalen Wright being that RB2 handcuff kind of selection. We saw Madison with Las Vegas last year. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Uh, give me Jalen Wright over Madison. Give me Achane at ADP, and maybe you do some random bets on Ollie Gordon throughout the season to score a random touchdown.
I like it. I like it. So as long as Achane stays healthy, I think he could return. You could return it. You're getting your return on investment here. I really do think that because of the involvement in the passing game. And at the end of the day, nothing's going to change here. Like I don't see that changing. I think he's going to remain a focal point in the passing game. You mentioned it. Tua doesn't go through his reads. He's going to check it down. Sometimes to Johnu, often to Achane, right? Like he knows where Achane's going to be in the flat right there. And that's pretty much you get the ball in his hands and it's going to be 5, 6 yards. Sometimes it's going to go all the way for a touchdown. That's the kind of explosiveness you got in that kind of player. I was wrong about Jalen Wright last year. All right. I'm going to be the first one to admit I was super high on Jalen Wright last year. I thought he was going to get opportunities. He really never got the opportunities. And there were the chances. I'm not going to sit here and say there weren't chances. The backfield was dinged up at times behind Achane. Achane wasn't always 100%. And Wright never really got those opportunities, whether it was because he wasn't able to pass block, whether he didn't understand the playbook. That remains to be seen. All I know is that the team does like him. Everything I've read, all the beats that I've beat reporters from Miami, that everything points towards Wright. You know, the team liking Wright. They're high on the young man. This is the year. I'm going to go right back to the well. Like this is what I'm going to double down from last year, and I think that he's going to be that guy. If Achane were to miss any time, I do expect Wright will assume the majority of the workload. I'm not concerned about Madison. I feel like that's more of a depth piece than anything else. I don't see Madison as a threat to anyone in this backfield. Even Ollie, right? Like you mentioned, like I feel like I just don't see that being a threat. So I agree with you 100%. This is how I'm treating this backfield. Like I'm okay with HN. I'm 100% handcuffing with Wright. You're probably not going to be paying a premium on Wright right now. In dynasty leagues, I'm okay with going out and buying Wright at a cheap price. You can probably give up, the late draft pick for him if you want to invest here. Um, so yeah, I'm in. I'm in here on this backfield. I'm out in the pass game. I'm in on the backfield. And I'm kind of in lockstep with you when it comes to Miami here. And anything else you want to discuss here before we move on to the next team?
Let's talk about the offensive line one more time. No, no, just kidding,
Okay.
just kidding. I
They're
think,
going to be bad, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to be bad. But I do
yeah,
think that that benefits Achane to the sense where when Tua feels the pressure, he's going to check it down. Like,
mhm.
right? Like we've seen that, and I think that that's just going to beef up the passing stats for Achane. And for fantasy purposes, that's going to be a plus. But anything else there?
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
Next team here, New England Patriots. This is a team I think did very well this offseason, both in the draft and in free agency. When you look at, some of their additions, they obviously they added, and I think Stephon Diggs is a big name, right? I think it's a noble name. Is he past his prime? I do think so. Does he have plenty of gas left in his tank? Before the injury last year, he was producing at a very high level, right? You get a receiver like him with a young quarterback in Drake May, someone who um, I think has a lot of potential. You get him that veteran presence. They added offensive line. We obviously know about Will Campbell. We were covering the draft. We all expect him to go there. That's huge for this team. They added some pieces, defensively. They added some pieces on the offensive line. Yeah, they kept Austin Hooper around. They lost, but keep some players or whatnot. But I think overall, New England has done a good job, Tyler, at continuing to plug away and plugging these holes. Where do you stand with New England on what they've done this offseason and in the draft?
I agree with you. Last year was step number one of the rebuild. They found their quarterback of the future. Really, really like what we saw from Drake May, despite some poor coaching, some poor play calling, some poor offensive line play. There were some poor pass plays too. But I think when we add the context of everything that was surrounding Drake May, we can build some excuses for it. They bring in Mike Vrabel as the head coach, Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator. And McDaniels really hasn't stuck as a head coach for various reasons, but he keeps getting offensive coordinator gigs. And I really like what his offenses tend to bring in terms of a passing element. They spread the ball around. They're not afraid to go vertical. We've seen some big seasons, especially in like I look back to his Denver years with like Kyle Orton. Um, big seasons back there. And when we look at like his last burnout in Las Vegas, it's tough for me to put a lot of blame on him. When we look at Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Aiden O'Connell, none of those guys are of the caliber and the ilk of Drake May, who has that dual threat skill set that we covet for fantasy. I'm expecting now that we've got a new offensive coordinator here in McDaniels, a big step up from Alex Van Pelt last year, who refused to utilize May's rushing skill set. He didn't design any single runs or RPOs or anything for this guy to succeed. Um, to me, it's no surprise they had a top five draft pick. I felt like they were sandbagging him. Um, this was also a team in free agency that really wanted to go after some heavy hitters to put Drake May in a position to succeed. They were going after some of the best veterans out there in free agency. Baltimore's Ronnie Stanley at offensive tackle, left tackle, and Tampa Bay's Chris Godwin. They were both going after both those guys really heavily. Both opted to stick with their teams, but they offered Godwin over $20 million above what he signed for Tampa Bay, and he declined it to stick with the Bucks. So that's how heavily they were going after some of these veteran free agents. And Stephon Diggs a bit of a consolation prize, sure. 31 years old, coming off an ACL injury, but I still think he's got plenty of juice in the tank, like you said, in terms of being able to be that guy that elevates May's play. And he went from about a 50% slot rate guy. I'm curious to see the transition in New England and if he kicks out Demario Douglas, which I don't think that's a really tall ask, or if they make him more of the Buffalo type of wideout, where it was like a 70-30 split of perimeter slash slot and have him go outside with like Mac Hollins out there, who they grabbed from Buffalo. Um, maybe their new rookie, Kyle Williams. I don't know, Kendrick Bourne, like Kayshon Boutte. Like, there's a lot of There's a lot of names here, man. When we start looking through everything here, and with the question mark of Diggs being ready for week one, everything's pointing towards him being ready for week one. I want to make that clear. But there's still it's an ACL surgery. He's no spring chicken. It was suffered in week 8. He should be good for week one, but that's not a certainty. Um, I think there's a lot of questions in terms of the fantasy impact of the pass catchers. But for Drake May, like I just think it's a net W getting some of these veteran additions, getting some help along the offensive line, getting a boost in play calling, no longer having to split number one reps with Jacoby Brissett like they did that song and dance last year. He's gonna have the entire offseason to play and get reps with the ones. I'm buying a 2025 breakout for Drake May. I like him quite a bit.
Me too, dude. He was my top quarterback in last year's draft class. Like I didn't like the landing spot, and I thought the short-term outlook was not going to be promising given the deficiencies in New England. But they've quickly addressed a lot of these. Like if you look at it, they added a right tackle in free agency, right? They added a center. They drafted a left tackle. They drafted another center in the third round. They drafted another tackle in the seventh round. They added a guard in free agency, right? Like that's offensive line only. You talked about Stephon Diggs. You talked about Matt Collins. We talked about him when we talked about Buffalo. Like he's not a special receiver by any means, but he has that big play ability. So now you add that to, to the dynamics of this offense. They bring back, Hooper. They have Hunter Henry there. You have a pretty good backfield in Stevenson. They drafted Travion Henderson there. Like I think right now, if you're drafting, who are you drafting first? Drake May or Tua Tagovailoa?
Oh, Drake May for sure.
Yes, 100%. I'm with you there, but I just feel like there's these two teams are trending in different directions. I really do think that they've tightened that gap, right, where they're at between Miami and New England, where last year when you look at 8-9 and what 4-13 record, like that gap is now like less. Like I feel like they're getting closer. And I think New England's good, going to be much better than they were last year. And they've made those kind of moves. And you look at it, they've also done it in defense. It's not even on offense. They added a defensive end, a nose tackle, outside linebacker, inside linebacker, a cornerback. Like this team added a lot of pieces. I'm interested to see how it comes together. Now, when we look at it from a fantasy standpoint, we both just agreed that we're going to be taking Drake May ahead of Tua Tagovailoa in our fantasy drafts right now. And this is both best ball and season long for me. Where do you have May? Do you have him as a high-end QB2, low-end QB2, low-end QB1? Like, where do you have him right now on your board?
So last year I had Caleb Williams like a QB2, like 12 to 15. And that's kind of where I have May right now. Um, Expecting that leap forward. I think that's not going to be a smooth one necessarily, but his rushing productivity, I expect to see a massive spike. The catch rate for some of these players, I expect to also see a turn. Um, it's tough to be all the way in on this guy eclipsing like a top 10 status, which maybe that happens. I don't see that happening though with a team that's probably not equipped to do it in terms of the weapons yet. Like Diggs was a step in the right direction. I wish they would have gotten someone other than Matt Collins as the elevator. But yeah, I like what they're doing, and I think he's got top 12 potential in the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, I still think his rushing floor keeps him in top 15 mix.
Yeah, I think that's right about where I have them, the top 16, top 15. I think when you're looking at it, it's more of a mid-high end QB2 than a QB1 for me this year. Someone that I'll probably aggressively targeting in super flex two quarterback leagues. I think that that's kind of
Yeah.
where I would prefer him. I feel like if you miss though, like if you miss on that elite quarterback, right, in your single quarterback leagues, I'm okay with landing on May because of what you said. I do think he's going to give you a weekly floor given the rushing upside. Do I think there's going to be some, some bumps on the road? Sure. Do I think there's going to be growing pains? Sure. But if you look at the numbers last year, he exceeded 20 fantasy points in five different occasions, 19 fantasy points in two other occasions. So from week 6 all the way through week 17, I mean, he scored at least 19 fantasy points in seven games. So pretty decent, right? I think from a floor standpoint. Is there going to be some frustrating weeks? Sure. This is a young quarterback, and he is going to make those mistakes. But I do like him. I do think that he's going to be a reliable source of fantasy production there for fantasy managers there. When you look at the receiving group, are you trusting anyone in redraft? I know when you look at best ball, it's different. I think Matt Collins, you could take flyers as a as a stacking option with May because there could be those spike weeks. But is there someone in redraft here, Tyler, that you say, okay, I'm feeling comfortable drafting him this year?
As far as pass catchers, I don't think there's anybody I'm bullishly attacking. I think I might want to target Hunter Henry as a possible late selection. 18.3% target share last year. When we look at games where May started, which was week 6 through 17, during this 11 game stint, he averaged 5.9 targets per game, which was kind of just what we were talking about with Kincaid, where we're hoping for the 5 to 6 target mark. And Henry returned top 12 fantasy point production on a 10.1 per game basis. He's 31, but I think he makes for a rock solid tight end too in types of uh, what are they called? Two tight end starting leagues, which are kind of a rarity, or even just a tight end two in a best ball format. But even in just a redraft, if you miss the big first wave and you're just kind of punting the position, I don't really mind a swing there.
Yeah, I'm good with Henry. Like as your tight end two, or like you mentioned, tight end premium leagues, I think he's fine as well. For maybe some of that you could put in as a flex option in those kind of scoring settings. I think, depending on your other options. Okay with him. He finished tight end 12 last year. So some of that might not give you a weekly consistent floor, but I do think there's going to be some big moments for him there. Where do you have Diggs? Do you have him? I view him as a solid. So assuming he's healthy, right, week one, and assuming that all projections are correct that he's ready for the start of the season, uh, I'm going to view him as a solid wide receiver three option with wide receiver two upside, kind of where I have him penciled in. Where do you see him here with New England?
I think that feels right. Wide receiver three, maybe four. Uh, I just I'm curious if he's the same receiver bouncing back after last year. His yards per route run kind of took a dip as a. We can also kind of blame that on the slot rate with Houston, where he wasn't running as many vertical routes as the season prior with Buffalo. Um, but if he's not being propelled by touchdowns, he's got to be propelled by a lot of receptions, and perhaps that's what happens. Maybe he takes over the slot role, just kicks Demario Douglas to the side, and just picks up 7 to 9 targets per game. I want to see it. I want to see what we get from reports out of training camp, where he's being aligned. Hopefully, we get some blurbs on that by some Patriots beats. But that's what I want to know before making the distinction between wide receiver three and wide receiver four status.
Yeah, it's definitely something to keep a close eye on. But if he is lining up with us, I think he's going to benefit from the opportunities there. You look at Demario Douglas, 18% target share there for New England last year, 5.2 targets per game. I could see Diggs stepping into an even larger role than that. I could see it, that seven target mark, so long as he's healthy. And I think if Diggs is getting those kind of opportunities, I think he'll be all right. But it's a way to see a situation with him, see if he's, when, because we also have to take into account, right? New team, new offense, like timing, like getting that chemistry. And until he gets on that field, we're not going to know what that's going to look like. So keep an eye out on that. Let's talk about the backfield. Ramondre Stevenson, someone that a lot of people like. Last year, 16.5 opportunities, playing 62% of the snaps. Um, don't want to say it was a great season for Stevenson, finished RB 28. Where are you at with him this year? Like, are you in? Are you out? Are you kind of, how do you feel about this backfield?
I'm out. Stevenson, 3.8 yards per carry last year, bottom dwelling among all backs with 150 plus carries. Round two capital was spent on Travion Henderson, a very electric and dynamic running back. I'd expect a committee of sorts to begin the year. I will note that Stevenson has a very sizable contract. He signed a 4-year, $36 million extension, 17.1 million guaranteed just the other year. So I think he's going to get that nod in terms of the early season work. And if we're looking at like projections, yeah, you want to like skew him towards September. But leagues aren't won in September. So I'd expect the committee to begin the year favoring Stevenson with an eventual passing of the baton to uh, to Travion Henderson, who just has that explosiveness to his game. Where we were talking about it on the other live stream with Russell Clay the other day, where we were talking about how Nick Chubb had like the one game where he had like 3 or 4 carries and cleared 100 yards as a rookie, and they're like, okay, what are we doing here? Let's just give Nick Chubb the role. I feel like eventually that's going to happen for Henderson here, and I mean, this guy's just an explosive back, super great in the pass game, super great pass blocker, and he's priced as such. Like people are very, very excited. I'm not sure if it's rookie fever, but they are expecting Henderson to have this role. He's RB 19 compared to Stevenson, who's RB 39, and Antonio Gibson's undrafted on underdog. He's basically an afterthought right now. Um, I don't want to handcuff because I don't expect the Patriots to be a team that contends for top 10 points per game. And for that reason, I'm not really interested in that. I'd rather just take the bet on Stevenson in a zero RB format or Henderson if I'm trying to be aggressive and hoping that he gets that starting role sooner rather than later. I'm excited about Henderson. He was one of my favorite running back prospects in this year's class.
This feels like Tampa Bay last year, right? Where Rashad White, Bucky
Mm,
Irving, and then Bucky Irving just took over. I agree with you. Like I was going to ask you, but I already know I think I know the answer now. But I was going to ask you, you're on the clock, Henderson or Stevenson. I'm going Henderson. Like I feel like there's more upside there, and I'm going to take the upside. I think we've seen what Stevenson can give us, right? And I think we know what he's going to give us. I think Henderson's ceiling is much higher. And I think eventually, and I agree with you, I think this is a committee situation that Henderson eventually takes over, whether it's in October, November, second week of September. I don't know. That I
yeah.
don't know. It could take one play in the first week of the season, and then the team says, "Hey, you know what? Let's just shift gears, and this is what we're doing," and it sticks. Like we don't know, but I do think ultimately Henderson takes over here. Um, Anything else from New England? Because I feel like this team is pretty straightforward. Like I don't feel like there is a lot of unhidden or there's any secrets here. Like I feel it's pretty straightforward when you're thinking of it from a fantasy standpoint. Do you have anything else here for this team that you wanted to discuss?
So I'm working through projections, and it's really tough with this team when you look at like the number of players at wide receiver specifically. Kayshon Boutte, Kendrick Bourne, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker. Now we add Kyle Williams into the mix. Who ascends? You know what I mean? I think that's the question mark that we don't know at this time. But if we were to like have a crystal ball and look back a year from now at the answer, I wouldn't be shocked if it were Kyle Williams. He's a round 3 pick this year. It's 4.42 speed. Great yak per reception last year, 8.4. Um, and he landed on a team in search of pass catchers. Maybe he's the guy that ascends, like Polk and Baker last year, two rookies from the 2024 class that were complete whiffs. Polk struggled with drops and contested catches. Baker failed to impress in practice and never really made the field. He had one catch all year. I think there's an outside chance that Kyle Williams is like a sleeper selection that's written about in magazines that actually hits and comes to fruition.
I think he's going to be a waiver wire darling, right?
Yeah,
Eventually. Like
yeah.
I feel like if in season and redraft formats, like where he's not drafted, I think he could be someone that can eventually be a waiver wire target. Um, I think he could emerge as his second option behind, and this behind Diggs. Like I feel like Diggs is gonna, and this is me assuming Diggs is healthy, right? Like this is the conversation we're having. I'm assuming Diggs is healthy. I expect Diggs to be the alpha here. When you look at last year, like I was looking through the numbers just now, and only Hunter Henry averaged more than 5 targets per game. Like it was Hunter Henry 6.1, Demario Douglas 5.2, Booty 4.5, Hooper 3.5, Bourne 3.2. Like they spread the ball around here and no one really like dominated those targets. I feel like Diggs, a healthy Diggs will dominate there. And then I think Williams can carve out a role. I do think he's someone that could be serviceable. And if Diggs is out for any time or if Diggs missed, I think Williams could step up in that role. There, I do think he'll work out the outside receiver for them if they move Diggs to the inside, right? Like I feel like that's another thing that we have to monitor. So, Williams, someone in Dynasty you'd be, investing in? Is that what you're looking at here?
Yeah, I think I have him as my wide receiver 10 in this class. Yeah, I'm comfortable drafting him, let's say round 2, round 3 turn in
Yeah,
typical leagues.
I agree with that. But yeah, I think that's a good call. I think Williams is someone we'll be talking about at some point in 2025, maybe as a waiver wire, as a maybe a plug and play, a DFS cheap option. Like
Yeah.
this is all things to keep in mind. Like this is why we listen to this now. This is we're talking May. Keep this in mind when you're drafting in October, or not drafting, where you're setting lineups in October, looking to the waiver wires. Go back and check out this episode. We talked about Williams on this episode. Anything else here, Tyler?
I will say I'm gonna throw some darts on Kayshon Boutte in large field best ball tournaments, just because he was among the team leaders in total routes. He was on the field a lot. You're on the field a lot, I'll throw a dart on you.
There you go. This, by the way, this is the man right here that was throwing darts at Puka Nakua. All right, a couple of years ago. All right, he was the one advising. So listen to when Tyler talks receivers. Tyler, let's jump to the final team of the AFC East, the New York Jets. Lots of overhaul here. Lots of notable names got out the door. Lots of notable names new in the door. A couple key losses here: Devontae Adams, Tyler Conklin, Morgan Moses, Hassan Reddick, Aaron Rodgers, Javon Kinlaw. They added Justin Fields, Josh Reynolds. You got Brandon Stevens, Andre Cisco, Josh Myers, Chukma Okafor. I butchered that guy's name 100%. It's sorry about that, my man, but I tried. Talk to me about this team because I feel like despite losing a lot of notable names, they actually did a pretty solid job at adding pieces here. Where do you stand with the Jets?
They're a tough team, man. Year in transition for them coming off the Aaron Rodgers saga, which last year went really poor. He just kind of like commanded them to throw, despite him doing everything he could to not get sacked. I just didn't really like how last year played out for the Jets. I'm ready for the hard reset button. They brought in Justin Fields on a decent contract. Excited to see what that does. I mean, we've talked about Fields often because he's such a high floor fantasy asset. Now joins a team that I think still needs a lot of weapons. Like we look at like the top three receivers, it's Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard, Josh Reynolds. Yikes! They added Mason Taylor, the nepo baby of Jason Taylor. Um, uh, I don't know. I don't know. I'm struggling with the squad. I don't really have any strong takes here in terms of like overarching thoughts, but I am glad to see no longer Aaron Rodgers in the picture here.
Yeah, I think it's good for the Jets, right? I feel like that it was a cloud over New York with Aaron Rodgers
Yeah.
there. I think that changes this year. I like the addition of Justin Fields. I like the fact that they didn't draft a quarterback, right? Like they didn't exhaust the draft pick on a quarterback. I think that means that they're going to give Justin Fields that opportunity. You mentioned the contract is a good one, but there was always those reports surfacing regarding they're potentially drafting a quarterback. Maybe they draft a quarterback in the future. I think their actions suggest that they're going to give Justin Fields a fair shot here. Um, I like this for them. They drafted a right tackle in Membu. We
Hmm.
talked about him. I think that was a good addition. It was obviously a need here. We Elijah Vera Tucker. We just need him to stay healthy. Offensive line for me is still somewhat of an issue for the Jets. You look at the receiving group, it's Garrett Wilson or bust. I'm not going to be investing in the secondary here as far as, Josh Reynolds, the Lazards of the world, Aaron Smith that they drafted. I'm not really too interested there. I still like Garrett Wilson. Let's talk about him here. Where are you at with Garrett Wilson as far as are you buying? Are you not? Like, I feel like he's an easy investment.
Agree. I think he should be in line for 150 plus targets. You mentioned the offensive line. They bring back a lot of guys healthy. I thought the interior of the offensive line is now fully healthy. I liked the Membo addition in round one. Last year's round one pick, Fashanu from Penn State. He was purely a left tackle. Membo purely a right tackle. It felt like a great puzzle piece fit in terms of them completing the line, finally getting a fifth guy out there. There's some decent capital here spent on this line. And when Fields has time, I look back to the Chicago days where he had it was just him running for his life basically, where he just had no production from the Bears offensive front. Whatever we think about the Jets, they've invested resources in the offensive line where I think they're giving Fields a legitimate chance to produce. And he may not have a bunch of like explosive weapons in the pass catching game, but he's got a 6'5" guy now in Lazard. He's got a great playmaker in Garrett Wilson who can attack all levels of the field. I think Wilson's a guy that's let me check his ADP right now. That I don't know off the top of my head because I think he's probably oh, he's a 2-3 turn now. Okay. So round two, round three at ADP 27 overall. I'm very comfortable making that selection with Garrett Wilson, who should get a bunch of opportunity here. The secondary also had a lot of turnover here. They lost their defensive coordinator. They lost. They brought in Steve Wilkes, who will be running a 3-4 here. I'm expecting some bumps along the road. They lost one of their starting corners in DJ Reed, bringing in Brandon Stevens, who comes over from Baltimore, who is dreadful, absolutely dreadful. I don't know why they are currently projected to start him. But yeah, he will. If you're in IDP leagues, I would not mind investing in Stevens right now. Go pick him up off waivers because they will be avoiding Sauce Gardner's side of the field and peppering Stevens relentlessly, picking on this young man. I'm sorry, I'm very off the track here. Garrett Wilson, I think, is a guy that you'll be wanting to invest in. We've seen some issues with him in terms of battling targets with Devontae Adams, but Wilson just continues to impress at every turn. Like he kind of kicked off this Ohio State brigade of wide receivers with round one capital that have just taken the league by storm. And I still think we have yet to see the ceiling from Garrett Wilson, just which is crazy to think considering we've seen some good years from him already.
And he's done it with, and I know he caught passes from Aaron Rodgers last year. I get that, but he's done it with subpar quarterback play
Yeah,
like
yes.
throughout his career. He's had over 1,000 receiving yards in each of his first 3 seasons in the NFL, and he's caught passing from like Zach Wilson. Like it hasn't been pretty for Garrett Wilson there. Um, I agree with you when you say that we haven't seen his ceiling yet, right? I think him finishing wide receiver 9 last year, I don't think that's his ceiling. I think he has a top 5, season in him. Top maybe even top 3. Like I feel like he has that potential, that talent. I don't know if he's going to be able to get it done with Justin Fields, but let's not forget what DJ Moore did in Chicago with Justin Fields, right? Like I don't
Mm.
think we want to forget that. Um, I'm in on Wilson. I view him as a top 12 receiver. You mentioned he's coming off the board in that 2-3 turn. I think that's a pretty safe investment. I think you're locked into 1,000 plus receiving yards, 8 to 10 touchdowns here with upside for more. Um, he caught 100 passes last year, 95 the year before, has had over 150 targets every season since joining the team. Don't see that changing at all this year. I think he's a rock solid pick where he's going right now. Um, any other receivers here you'd be investing in? Because I'm not. It's Wilson or bust for me when it comes to this Jets team.
I agree with you. Are you interested in their round four pick, Arian Smith, a receiver out of Georgia? He's kind of on the smaller side, under 180 pounds. Um, I'll be honest, I did a lot of receiver profiles. This guy really didn't catch my attention. Um, but I wanted to see what your thoughts were on this guy, just because it's a thin depth chart to ascend.
No, you obviously because they took him, you kind of are looking and you're like, oh, I wonder how they're going to utilize him. I just don't see him carving out a significant role here. Like
Yeah.
I just don't see it. Like I don't even think he beats out Josh Reynolds. Like maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see that happening. I don't see him getting more opportunities than Josh Reynolds or even Alan Lazard here. Um, no interest in him. Are you interested in the rookie tight end Mason Taylor? Like
No,
any
I'm not. I'll be honest.
no?
No, we got the nepotism in full display here with him getting round two capital. His dad played for the Dolphins and the Jets. But his production at LSU was nondescript. It was irrelevant. It did not matter. He was not a difference maker. For him to get round two capital is blowing my mind, and I will be avoiding him at all costs. I'm drafting all the other tight ends that are uh, taken in those first like 3 or 4 rounds instead and over him because I just didn't see it. I didn't see Mason Taylor as a player that stood out. Am I wrong? You can make the argument that the wide receivers are so weak that Taylor will command some targets. But what are we in line for? A Tyler Conklin 60 catch, 600 yard, 3 touchdown campaign? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not in either. I'm, if I would be okay with being wrong here than drafting him, like, just for,
Yeah.
to see what happens. I don't believe it's going to come into fruition, especially in year one here. I think this backfield is super interesting, right? Because I think there's concerns out there, but I'm not concerned about Brees Hall. I know what kind of running back he is, and in my opinion, they should give him everything he can handle. He averaged 17.8 opportunities per game last year. He played in 73% of the snap. Like, I know that Braylon Allen took away opportunities from Hall last year, but I think that was like, it was people overreacted, in my opinion, for the opportunities that Allen had. He averaged 7 opportunities per game, right? He averaged 5.4 rush attempts. Brees Hall averaged 13.1. I think that the biggest takeaway here was that maybe expectations for Hall was 16, 15 plus rush attempts per game. That did not happen. It was more in that 13 range where you were hoping for two more. And I know it sounds silly, but that does count here. Um, where are you at with this backfield? It was kind of a 75-25 split there when you're looking at snaps. Are you expecting the same? Are you concerned about Hall? Like, he's coming off the board as a what, top five, top seven back right now?
No, he's RB 13. He's
He's
going at the
wait, he's RB 13?
yeah, people are taking him at the 3-4 turn.
What? Brees
People,
Hall?
Brees Hall, yeah, a guy who was a top 5 pick last year in drafts. People are just very, very out after last year's finish. Lost some marks in terms of advanced stats. Didn't really take a step forward. I get it to a degree. I get the concern. Let me rephrase that. I also think there's a lot of room for him to grow and get better. He does enter, I think, the final year of his contract, or maybe he has one
Yes.
more year.
No, it's
No,
one
he
more.
was a round two pick, so yeah, final year of his contract. But last year, I don't see the concerns personally, but I admit I'm super biased having Brees Hall everywhere in Dynasty. I think he's a fantastic buy right now and a player that I'm willing to put that stamp on as a guy that the market could just be entirely wrong here. He's shown flashes of greatness, and yeah, they brought in Braylon Allen, but I don't really care. I think
Yeah.
Brees Hall has that ability to be super special. Add in the ability of Justin Fields, who, unlike most mobile QBs, he's not afraid to check the ball down. I expect Brees Hall to be once again 76 catches in 2023, 57 catches in 2024. Another big receiving performance from Brees Hall. Couple that with some big play potential behind an improved offensive line. If the line could stay healthy, I'm very much in on Brees Hall.
Kind of to echo what you were saying about Fields checking it down. I pulled it up here. So this is, keep in mind, everyone, this is going into last year. I haven't gathered the data from last season. So this was going into last year. 18.2% of his pass attempts were to the running back position, which, when you look at it, it was top 13 in the NFL going into last season. These numbers will be updated, and I usually post this chart over there at fantasyguru.com, part of the draft guide. The QB target shares kind of tells you exactly where the ball goes for each quarterback. And I haven't dug into that, obviously, I've gotten any of the numbers from last year for Fields. But going into last year, 18.2 targets. It's in the green when you look at it, right? For some of the other quarterbacks. So definitely above average there. So the average, for perspective, 17% when I'm taking all the starting quarterbacks of the NFL teams last year. Um, so yeah, I think that's a good point. I think he's going to be very involved in the passing game there. I don't see that changing. I'm not concerned like you, man. I feel like this is an incredible buying opportunity, right? Where you have a running back that was going in the first round last year in a lot of drafts, getting him in that third, fourth round. For what reason? Because he underwhelmed. I think this is recency bias at its finest. I feel like this is the panic button, and I'm going to buy the dip. This is like Josh Jacobs all over again from last year, right? Like, everyone was like, "Oh, that's it. He's done. He's cooked." I don't think Brees Hall is done. I don't even think we've seen his ceiling season yet. Um, yeah, I'm big on Hall, man. Like, I'm buying. I view him as a top. I have him as a top 10 back on my board. I think he has that top 5 potential. So yeah, I'm in on Hall. I'm in on. we didn't talk too much about Fields. Are you buying Fields? Like, I feel like he's fits in that Drake May category where if I miss on that elite quarterback, I'm totally fine with Fields or May because I feel like they're floor plays. And I actually feel that Fields has a sneaky ceiling. Like I do think that Fields has a sneaky ceiling as well. Where are you at with Fields? And anything else to add to Brees Hall? Sorry, I didn't mean to jump from Hall to Fields, but anything else to add to Brees Hall?
I think we're both in lockstep there of a potential brief breakout at
Yeah.
that round 3, 4 turn. ADP right now at 36.0, so it's literally right at that turn. Um, Pivoting to Justin Fields. I mean, he's just been a consistent fantasy producer when given the opportunity. The floor's been there. The ceiling's been hit or miss due to some offensive line play, some inaccuracies of his own, some holding the ball too long. Uh, I'm fine with him. Like, if you miss out on the elite cohort, like we talked about the possibility of getting a Drake May, maybe you pair him with Fields, bounce back and forth between these two, and have yourself a pair of AFC East QBs that you feel confident in, knowing both provide good floors, and then you play the one you think has the highest ceiling in a given matchup in a given week. Totally fine with that. Yeah, I think Fields has just continuously shown that he offers some crazy rushing stats. Unfortunately, I don't think the pass catching weapons here can elevate him to that 30 plus point ceiling, but 20 plus ceiling, yeah, I'll take a 20 plus outing for my fantasy QB every day.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that right there. Anything else here with the Jets? I not for like I don't have much else. I think this is another straightforward team. I think you really are looking at the primary guys at each position outside of tight end for me. And for me, it's three guys: Fields, Hall, Wilson. Are you going to be handcuffing with Allen? Like, do you feel like he's someone you're going to be handcuffing here with?
Allen,
Braylon Allen, sorry.
Braylon Allen. It's a fair question. No, I don't believe I will be. When I look at like the running back depth chart, they've got Isaiah Davis, Kenny Nwangu, that super athletic guy from Minnesota. Um, yeah, it's not really a depth chart worth concerning yourself over. So sure, if you want to, I'll just be honest. I really only want to handcuff in good offensive schemes that I envision putting up a lot of points. Jets aren't one of them, so no, I probably won't be eagerly doing it.
All right, that's it for the AFC East, Tyler. Anything else here? I want to do a quick exercise before we get going, but anything else for these teams that we haven't discussed or anything that you may have thought about now or anything?
No, we covered a lot here. I think we did a pretty good position by position view for the upcoming 2025 landscape. No, I don't have anything to add.
All right, before you let everyone know all what you got coming up and where they can find you now. So let's do something fun here. Let's rank the top four quarterbacks in the AFC East, the top four running backs. We'll just do the top five receivers and like that, top at each like so. List me your AFC East quarterback rankings right now.
Okay, I'm gonna go with. Let me pull up the QB so I know what to
Josh
say.
Allen. We have to
Yeah,
say
yeah,
Josh Allen.
it's got to
Josh
be
Allen is
Allen.
going to be the top of every ranking there. um,
Absolutely. I think the question really comes down to Fields versus May
yeah.
for QB2. I'm going to go with May. I'm going to take the step forward. I like the situation a little bit better. Uh, it's against ADP. I will say Fields is going QB 12 at 101 ADP. May is going QB 14 at 113. So a full round later, Drake May is going off the board. I could see that flip flopping. Give me May over Fields by a hair, and then Tua a distant QB4.
I'm in lockstep with you. Like I feel it's very close between Fields and May. I have them both as top 15, top 16 quarterbacks here. Like both, like in my opinion, like you're looking at that low end QB1, high end QB2 range for me. I'll do running backs here. I'm gonna go with Hall, Achan, Cook, and Henderson. But man, I think it's going to be very close between Cook and Henderson. Why I'm giving Cook the advantage here is because he is going to be the day one starter. But I'll tell you this: like if we're going from October down the line, I think it's going to be very close between Henderson and Cook.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I will flip flop the top two. I'll take Achan over a Hall. I love that explosive play of Achan.
I know. It's
I'm a
so
sucker
close
for
though.
it.
Like it's 1A and 1B. Like I have them both like within two of each other. Like it's right there. Both are top 10 without a doubt. Both are top seven for me without a doubt. There. All right, you are the wide receiver guru. So give me your top five AFC East receivers.
Well, Garrett Wilson, I think, is probably at the top here.
Correct.
Um,
This was challenging, right? This is challenging.
yeah, I don't know if I want to say Tyreek's name here, but I feel like I have to just based on value. So I'll say Tyreek next. Um, New England, Buffalo, nah, not Shakir. New York Jets. Who else we got? Miami. We got New England. Oh man, this is tough. Yeah, I'll go Diggs, and then I'll go Shakir, and then I'll throw in
Waddle.
Waddle.
I think
No,
that's the
I'll put Waddle. I'll put Waddle above Shakir.
okay. I
Oh,
I could get behind. I'll probably flip flop Shakir and Waddle. I'll take the floor. But if you're shooting for upside, I think Waldo's your guy, right? So
yeah.
I'm in lockstep with there. And then let's do I guess top three tight ends. This is
Johnny for sure.
Jonnu
Yeah,
Smith, right? And then Kincaid. Like that's it. we and oh well, no, wait. Hunter Henry. I'll take Smith, Henry, Kincaid in that order.
I'll do Smith, Kincaid, Henry in the event where Kincaid takes a step forward. Henry's 31. I'll take the bet on the younger guy.
You can flip flop them. They're
Yeah.
both tight end twos for me. But yes, the only one that's a tight end, top 10 tight end for me there is Smith.
Yes.
That was fun. That was fun. We'll do that again for the next one. This one was a tough one though because you look at some of these teams and that right there shows you just how thin some of these receivers are in some positions right there. So keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. Tyler, before we get going, why don't you let everyone know where they can follow you, what you got cooking, what you got, coming up and stuff like that.
Sure, you guys can follow me on Twitter or X at Tyler Buecher. Catch all my work over at fantasyguru.com. We're going through these as an audio version. I'll be putting it to pen as well for some articles for our subscribers over there at Fantasy Guru, looking at our fantasy previews for each team. We got our NFL best ball rankings will be coming up shortly for Underdog, DraftKings, trying to get a bunch of them out there. Drafters. I'll have them up shortly on the website. And then we've got our draft guide launching beginning of June. So keep an eye out for that. And I appreciate you, Armando, for inviting me here for this AFC East preview.
Yeah, man. I reached out to you last week and we talked about it. I think this is a good idea, man. So you're going to be doing it, like you said, written format. We have the podcast we're going to be doing each and every week. We're going to be doing two podcasts a week covering all the divisions. So it was an in-depth process here today. We talked a lot. I think we broke it down pretty well. So I'm happy to have you joining me for all of these. This is going to be fun. I think it's going to be good content. It's good, to kind of break these things down and really get into it. Like you mentioned, draft guide right around the corner, man. And it's less than a month away. And that is a fun-filled time with lots of content there on the site. So make sure you're checking that out at fantasyguru.com. Check out all of Tyler's work, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, it's great work. He said it earlier, right? Like if you do work that you actually want to listen to or read or watch, all of that stuff, it's going to be easy for everyone else. Really, really quality and great content there that Tyler is putting up. So I always enjoy reading the articles. I enjoy reading your content, man. So keep it up. Keep up the great work. Make sure you're following him there. We broke down the AFC East today. We're going to continue breaking down every division in the NFL each and every week, twice a week here. Next, we'll do AFC West will be the next one. We'll be doing that on Friday. So it's going to be every Monday, every Friday. Post that today. We are recording on Tuesday. Weather delays here. Tyler had some bad weather. It was bad weather down here in Philly too, which is a shitty day yesterday on Monday when it comes to weather, man. But you know what? The sun is out today. We were able to talk some football, and we're going to be doing that each and every week here at the Mind the Marsal podcast. Remember, you can check all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. Follow me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal. And there's on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Mind the Marsal. Remember, if you're enjoying the podcast, enjoying the content, please make sure you rate, follow, review the podcast wherever it is you're consuming it. If there's anything you want us to talk about here on this podcast, make sure you email that to mindofmarsal@gmail.com. Any topics, anything you want us to cover, we will go ahead and do so. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully, you enjoyed this week's journey through the mind of Marsal. Until next time.